And we are live. The Future Agent Podcast is back, episode 3. The topic of conversation today is what is the exact statistic that we're going to use? 84?
84% of agents fail in the first what?
2 years, 24 months. They don't re-up in those first 24 months. They really probably fail in the first 12 months. They go get a part-time job, and then when they get hit with their fees and their dues 24 months later, because that's when you got to re-up, they're like, no, I'm out.
So we're going to talk about why. So a couple of things. There was a very interesting video that we analyzed, and we think a lot of these traits that salespeople or mistakes that salespeople make absolutely translate to real estate. So we want to get into some of those. There are 9 very specific things. So realtors that are listening to this, ask yourself objectively, are you failing in any of these camps? Out of these 9 things that we're going to talk about, where can you improve? Because if you don't have the amount of business that you feel that you should have or would like to have, you're probably missing the boat on one of these 9 things.
You know, I think that, like you said, this is going to take a little bit of, as Jocko Willink calls it, I'm so glad I read this book early in my real estate career, extreme ownership, right? Because I think that there's a lot of agents that I just said right again, now I'm super self-conscious because you've been calling me out. There's a lot of agents that are unwilling to have extreme ownership when it comes to where their business is at, and it's always somebody else's fault. It's the brokerage's fault, which I'm definitely going to highlight here in just a minute because I do think that plays a role in this, but it's always the market's fault. It's interest rates aren't low enough. It's none of my friends are buying houses. None of my parents are selling houses. Like, there's always something that goes into it. But the reality is that if you take your business and you take control of it, there is absolutely a spot for you in this industry.
1,000%. So I'm going to give a little bit of context, and then Boo, you have first comment. So point number 1 is you refuse to hunt. Here's what I mean by this. You're always looking for somebody else to give you leads, to give you clients, to give you listings. Somebody has to solve it for you. You are not willing or capable to go out there and hunt for yourself. To that you say what, Boo?
To me, I say it's 50-50, both of those. It's a capability thing, and it's a desire thing. This is and will always be a lead generation business, just like I think any other sales career is. If you are unwilling or unable, and that's where I think that the brokerages have some culpability in this, if you are unwilling or unable to go out and generate leads on your own, you are going to fail in this business, right? If you are unwilling, you got to fix that. And to me, if you're getting into sales and are unwilling, probably get out of the industry, any sales industry, specifically real estate that you are in. If you are unwilling, then that's one thing. If you are unable, then I would ask yourself, is the brokerage that I'm at able to teach me? Are the methods, are the techniques that they are teaching, are they actually going to help me generate more sales? And if the answer is no, then it's a brokerage issue. And I think that you should revisit some of the other options out there, but you have to get into this with the understanding. It doesn't matter how long you've been in it. If you've been in it for 13 years, like, I think that you have probably put a little bit more of an emphasis on lead generation since you joined the team, and you have 3 times more listings now than you have ever had since joining the team.
No doubt. And so I think here the mistake that a lot of agents make is they have the wrong objective. So they say, hey, if I can find a team that gives me leads, if I can find a partner that will pay for my marketing, if I can do this, if I can solve for that, then everything will be perfect. But I think whenever you are dependent on something else to give you business, you're vulnerable. Why? Because let's say you accomplish that, Boo. You go to this team, they're giving you leads, all is well, you love it, you're closing deals. At any moment in time, they can unplug you from that source.
Turn the faucet off.
And you're done.
Yep.
You're done. So the goal is not that it's bad to take leads. I think leads can be a very powerful training mechanism, but you want to build something that nobody can take away. I went through that myself. I was on a team getting leads. It was great. I was closing deals. All of a sudden on a random Tuesday, they unplug you, and now what do you have left? So I think the question that agents need to answer is, if I didn't have any partnerships, any vendors, nobody was paying for my marketing, could I still produce? Do I know how to do that for myself alone on an island? Until you can confidently say, yes, I think you're vulnerable. And at any point in time, you can get fired. A lead source can change. You can get more expensive. Someone can go in another direction, and now you have nothing left.
This has been interesting to see too, because I think with a lot of these new agents that we are hiring on, a lot of people have 1 or 2 transactions right out of the gate, whether it's a close friend, a family member, something like that they are ready to go immediately. I think there's a lot of agents that get into this and like, this is easy. This is chill. I can do this job all day long because they were able to generate 1 or 2 leads with very minimal lead generation activities. What are you going to do in month 4 and 5 and 6 when those things close? I also think that there's a lot of talk in our industry about how this is a wavy business. There's a lot of ups, there's a lot of downs. We talked about that in our training last Tuesday about how there's waves. And I think what happens, I know what happens in agents' business. They lead generate and they prospect like crazy for 90 days. Then they get some leads in the door and then they start closing transaction. And what's the first thing that goes out the door? The prospecting. They stop prospecting. So then all of a sudden when those leads go like this, they close. And then what does an agent look at their pipeline and think? I have nothing going on. So then they're back down like this for another 90 days. And then it goes up. And I think what we want to preach here and what we want to stress and teach is that we want to eliminate some of those ups and downs, some of those waves that can come in this industry. The second that you stop doing lead generation, we're going to talk about content creation here in just a minute. The second that you stop doing prospecting activities, your lead sources dry up quickly in this business.
And you can get so discouraged so fast because if you know that from lead to closing could be 90 days, you're not going to make money for a while, my guy. And so point number 1, we refuse to hunt. Point number 2, we don't like making calls and we don't like getting in front of people. All we want to do is either just post on social, just send some texts and some emails, but we don't want to get in front of everybody. When we get on the phones, we're awful. This is something that you and I have been talking about a lot here in the office, trying to polish people's skills on the phone. If we do not have people skills to where we feel confident making a phone call, having a buyer consultation, having a good listing presentation to where you can be in front of somebody and actually do a good job, you just want to automate everything, you're going to struggle.
Yeah, it's been very interesting to see because I am doing anywhere from 5 to 10 interviews a week right now, I would say, and have been for the last 3 to 6 months. It has been fascinating to see agents that come in and I can clearly tell that they have not had a real estate conversation in 90 days. So the lead generation portion is absolutely a part of this. The other part of this is a skill development issue, right? And I think where so many agents go wrong is that they stop prospecting and what happens to their leads. Yes, we know that those disappear, but what happens to the skill set? That sword can get dull so quickly in this business. And especially with like, if you look at Utah's market today, if you are not aware that Saratoga is trading differently than Eagle Mountain and the concessions that you can get in East Lehigh versus West Lehigh are entirely different, that's what I'm talking about. And the only way that you can keep your sword sharp is by constantly being on the phones and constantly having those real estate conversations. I think the other part of it too, and we're going to talk about this point here in just a minute as well, we have a short-sighted mindset with this, right? We're looking and saying, hey, if this person isn't ready to transact today, that's what I'm looking for. That conversation was a fail. No, you're planting the seeds for the future. You just got to be here in 3 to 5 years to harvest that.
For sure. So calling people, contacting people, being willing to get in front of a human being. So whatever insecurities you have to fix. If you get nervous, if you get anxiety, if you don't know what to say, if you don't know how you sound, you have to fix those so that you can get on the phones when you need to and you can get in front of people when you need to. Otherwise, it's going to be very, very difficult.
Well, I think it's depressing to me too. Some of these phone calls that I hear from agents in our industry, hey, are you or anyone you know looking to buy or sell a house? No? Okay, see you later.
And that's it.
I mean, you have to have a message. You have to have a script. You have to have something of value that you are calling and saying, hey, Tony, I saw that 6 months ago you and the wife were looking for something in Saratoga. I just had perhaps the best deal that I have seen in the last 12 months come across my desk in Saratoga Springs. If you have 60 seconds, I'd love to run you through it.
Much more compelling argument.
You have to have something of value that you are giving to people. Otherwise, you're going to cold call for eternity and nothing is going to come from it.
And here's what I want to highlight. Did you guys notice how that just rolls off the tongue? Like the words just come and you just know that it's just the phrasing is there, the wording is there. That comes from practice. So if you don't practice, if you're not role playing, if you're not scripting, then it's not going to happen that way. It's not going to be smooth. You're not going to have the same kind of delivery. You're going to have to try to come up with new words all the time. So as agents, we have very similar conversations every single day with some minor variations, but you're talking to a buyer, you're talking to a seller, certain bullet points. So as you get better, as you practice, then it just kind of rolls off the tongue and it gets much easier. Point number 3.
Sorry, really quick, if I just add, the reality of it is that there are maybe 3 to 4 total objections that exist within our industry. You can write them down and you can practice them 100 times. One of my biggest pet peeves in this industry is when agents look at me and they say, hey, I know I wasn't really good at role playing and practicing there, but I'm better with live ammunition. No shot. Never have I seen somebody that is actually good at transacting that sucked at role playing, and vice versa. Never have I seen somebody that was really good at role playing not also be very successful with clients. So practice, get lunch, and then practice before you start going and playing with live ammunition, because you will get your lunch money taken.
Absolutely. Point number 3, you talked about having a short-term mentality. I often talk about this in my courses. 10-10-40-40. Real quick, this concept changed my life. I didn't invent it. It comes from Sharon. 10-10-40-40. 10% of people out there are ready to do business with you right away. They just need to know that you exist. They're there. They're open to it. Great. 10% of people. The other 10% of people will never do business with you no matter what you do, no matter what you say. They don't like you. They don't like your hairdo. You're this, you're that. You're Mormon, you're Republican. They're not feeling you. They don't want to talk to you. Most agents focus on those 20%. We're looking for the 10 that are ready today. And the other 10% that'll never do business with us, depress us.
We let them crush us.
They make us sad. Yeah. We don't. Every time we run into one of them, we question everything, and they totally break us. We go home. We're done for the day. There's 80% left. So the other 40 is people that would do business with you, but they need time. Maybe they're not ready right this second. Maybe they need something. They need to work on their credit. They need to file their taxes. They need something where they need time. The other 40% is people that would work with you, but they need information. So they don't know that the program exists. They don't know how much equity they have. They don't know the process. They don't know this. They don't know that. So what you want to do is build consistent content or communication for the 80%. If you run into the 10, awesome. Those are the people that you're going to close right away. But it's in the 80%. And we as agents, we're short-sighted. We're looking for the 10. And we're too insecure to let the other 10 that isn't going to work with us not break us. We forget about the other 80.
Yeah, I think it's super important to understand too, and I tell everybody that I interview this, especially the newer agents, there is a steep learning curve in this industry. I think it's probably in any sales. I've never sold anything. I sold alarms for a summer, got my ass kicked. Other than that, though, everything that I've always sold has been real estate. To me, it doesn't matter what team, what brokerage, what environment you join, there is going to be an 18 to a 24-month learning curve before this starts to feel comfortable, before this starts to feel natural to you. So if you are not getting into this with the minimum expectation that I am going to grind my face against concrete for the next 24 months until this starts to click, you are going to fail before you even start. This is a long-term business, right? When you look at the numbers, 6 to 8 times is the amount of times you have to reach out to a warm lead. 13 to 15 times is the amount of times you have to reach out to a cold lead before they ever want to even talk to you and get serious. That takes time. So if you are not willing to approach this with a long-term mindset and say, hey, I'm 24, most of my friends aren't going to be buying for 2 to 3 years. I'm going to start laying the foundation now. I'm going to do the groundwork now. You are going to miss out, and all of the work that you did previous is going to be worthless to you if you are not approaching this with a 3-year minimum at least.
At least. So remember, 10, 10, 40, 40. Don't just focus on that top 10. Don't forget about the 80. Everything you do is about the 80. They either need time or information. So you need to become the resource of the information and develop systems to be able to follow up with these people so that when that time comes, whether it's in 6 months or in 40 months, you're still there. Point number 4, you get bored with repetitive tasks. We do the same thing every day, my guy. Buyer consultations, listing presentations, we're training agents, we're having the same phone calls. If you get bored with repetitive things, you're really going to struggle. If you always want to do new things and different things, like you said, there's only 3 or 4 different objections. It's very repetitive. And I see that as a positive though, because for me that there's very few things that you need to master because we're doing the same thing every single day. But if you get bored, it's going to be tough.
How many times in your 13 years in this business have you been asked by other agents what the silver bullet is?
All the time.
All the time. The amount of times that I had people ask me, hey, what do you do every day? What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing in order to succeed like this? The amount of times that I would look back at them and I would just say, I'm consistent with everything that I'm doing every single day. And they would look at me and be like, what are you really doing?
What aren't you telling me, right?
This is the silver bullet within our industry. If you are wondering, and this is any sales environment, I think, if you are wondering what it takes to be successful at this, it is daily consistent action. No massive action is ever going to lead directly to real estate results, is my personal opinion. Those that are successful and have longevity in this business are those that are willing to do the same thing day in and day out, no matter how boring or monotonous it might feel, because they understand that this is not a game of massive action. This is a game of daily consistent action. It's doing the same things over and over and over again until you have enough information to take it and say, hey, this did work or this didn't work, but you are doing that daily consistent action until your fingers bleed.
And we talk about this in other realms, and it makes sense. If you're going to the gym, you're doing the same exercises. If you're a basketball player, you're doing the same drills. You're practicing your free throws. You're practicing your ball handling. You're practicing your three-point shot. Like there's not an infinite number of skills that you need to be a good player. So if you don't love the game, if you don't like shooting free throws, if you don't like practicing on your ball handling, you're not going to be a pretty good basketball player. If you're always trying to reinvent the wheel, it's the same exact thing. So here I think is number one, to your point early on, agents get bored with that, or they don't know what those 8 to 10 core skills that they need to develop are, which then I put that back on the brokerages and on the team leaders that don't teach agents. Here are the 7 things that if you get really good at, you're going to succeed in this business. So it's not always the agent's fault. I think if you're in a position where you can't answer these questions and you're like, I genuinely don't know what I'm supposed to be doing on a daily basis, you're in the wrong place.
Yeah. And this, I mean, people always ask me what my daily schedule looks like. I wake up, I work out, spend time with my kids, I come to work, I go home and I hang out with my family, and I wake up and I do it again. Boring to some, but the success is the exciting part to me. And so if you can't twist that, if you can't get that context correct, and you're always looking for things to try to spice this up, selling houses is the spicy part of this. The only way that you get there, though, is by doing the daily consistent things that it takes to sell houses.
Daily things. Here we go. Number 5, commission breath.
Ugh.
Commission breath. So 95, here's a crazy stat, by the way. And this isn't me. This is our lovely friends at NAR. 95% of realtors never contact a client after a transaction closes, which leads to another stat that 75% of consumers will use a different agent for their next deal than the one that they originally used. Why is that? That makes no sense to me, because we talk about lead gen all the time and we're always looking for leads and new people. How do I get in front of new people? Well, you do that, you succeed, you close the deal, you did a great job, and then you ghost these people and you go back to square one to try to go with the strangers again. Why do you think we as agents continue to do that when it makes no sense?
Yeah, because once the commission clears, I'm done. Right? I used to have that joke when I was in production when people would call me with stuff after the closing. I'm like, did I already get paid on this? Okay. Terrible, terrible mindset to have in this industry. I think part of it too is at the beginning, I think it's so rare to have a transaction in your first 12 to 24 months. And when I say rare, 70% of agents in our marketplace are currently doing 4 deals or less per year. So we're talking about 1 a quarter. So do you think that agent, when they're not approaching it from an abundance mindset, they're approaching it from a scarcity mindset? How do you think that they sound on the phones? How do you think that they sound in person? How do you think their buyer consultation goes? How do you think their listing presentation goes? You can smell it on them before they even walk in the door from the time that they get out of their white BMW 3 Series because they had a decent quarter last month.
Yeah, and I'm empathetic to that because I've been there to where I need that deal to pay my mortgage. So I get it. I'm empathetic to that. To that, I would say you need to get into an environment where the team prioritizes getting you into production. That's why I think our team does well, because if there's an agent that is struggling to produce SOI, well, Zillow is an option. And Zillow can keep you busy to where you have 2, 3, 4, 5 deals in the pipeline. If one of them falls apart or it needs to be extended, it doesn't kill you. So again, I'm empathetic to the agents that have to push a little bit because they're nervous about making their car payment, but that clouds your judgment. And that's not safe for the consumer, because now that you have an ulterior motive to get you to close when maybe that's not the right thing for you to do.
Well, I think part of this issue too is that the lens that agents are viewing a successful day in the office is broken right now. I think there's so many agents that are paying attention to how many closings they have and nothing else. And so they are basing their success from that week and that month and that quarter off of, did I have a transaction close or not? You have to be paying attention. This goes back to the last point that we were just talking about. And we stress this all the time in our office. A closing is not a win. A closing is not a successful day. That is a result of the successful days that you had 90 days before, right? I can always tell an agent how successful an agent was today based on what they were doing 90 days ago. So you have to approach this business entirely different from a context perspective. If the only context for a win that you have is based off of a closing, your commission breath is going to be reached across the table from your clients. If you are viewing this as, hey, I made my 25 phone calls and my 20 conversations that I had today, then the commission and the closing is a natural byproduct. And that's what you need to be paying attention to as a win within this industry.
Well, and it's also depressing to have one win per quarter.
Yeah.
Like there's only one day a quarter that you can celebrate, maybe. If through that lens, and you've said this before, every other day sucks. You lost 89 days and then you closed one. That's the day that you went to Tucanos and you were happy. And then next Monday comes around, you're back in the office and you're depressed again.
And you know you got 89 more days of grinding your face on the cement.
Something happens again.
Yeah.
Till something happens again. All right, here we go. Next one. You're going to be very opinionated on this. Agents don't actually work as hard as they think.
That's facts. Are you going to give us any intro or you want me just to take it?
I just want you to take this one.
So when we opened up this office, one of the things that I was absolutely hell-bent on instilling in here was mandatory office hours from the time of 10 o'clock to 2 o'clock. Now, is that something that I'm tracking every day? No. Do I have the ability to do it? Yes. Why did I want that in there? Because if you look at me during an interview and I tell you I expect you in the office for 20 hours a week, and that is enough to deter you from joining my team, to me, crisis averted. That kept you from joining my team and me pissing you off over the course of the next 90 days with me texting you saying, dude, what are we doing? Where are you at? Where are the transactions? Where are your calls? Show me what you have been working on. So to me, this is one of those things where it was like a godsend almost, and I did not expect it to have the effect that it has. Why are our agents producing at the rate that they are, which is the statistical anomaly within the state right now? To me, it is because they are willing to put in more time than over 70% of our industry right now. And that's 20 hours a week.
And it's a compound effect. It's absolutely a compound effect. And here I think COVID did a lot of damage. Because now everybody feels like they can work from home. They feel like they don't need to go into the office. And then all of a sudden it's 11:30 a.m. and you're watching highlights of the Buffalo Bills last weekend for 27 minutes and your day's gone. So when you break it down, you quantify it, you need to show up to work. If you worked anywhere else, you got to show up. You got to clock in. It's your pay is based on how many hours were you in the building. Real estate, and not only real estate, but I think entrepreneurship in general. We feel like we have time freedom. We have all these freedoms.
We're our own boss.
Before you've earned them. Yeah. So if you want to be your own boss, ask yourself, would you hire you? If you know, so agents, for all of you, you know how hard you work. You know what activities you're doing. Would you hire yourself? Would you pay yourself the amount of money that you want to get paid? Are you truly worth that? I had to ask myself that question. And at that time, the answer was no.
So true or false? Because I love looking at your numbers. I'm not in production, but I think mine would reflect this. Do you feel like you're spending more time in the office in the last 9 months than you did the 12 months previous?
Absolutely.
And your numbers are what? Triple what they were a year ago. From year 12 to year 13, your production has tripled already from a successful time, right? And your numbers have tripled. To me, there's a couple of things that go into it, but I think the biggest one is when you get out of the house, you're not hanging out with the wife, you're not hanging out with the newborn, you're putting your time in like you need to. What happens to your numbers from a successful agent? Let alone if you're brand new, let alone if you're 2 years in and have done 3 deals so far. It leads to more transactions because you are actually putting in the time. It is so much easier to come here. You're surrounded by 40 people that are all trying to do the exact same thing at a high level. And what happens to your numbers?
Well, and it also eliminates the excuses. Because if you're just at home on an island by yourself, you might be able to trick yourself into, oh, the market's bad. Rates are bad. Nobody's buying.
These leads suck.
Yeah. Kamala's the worst. Trump's the worst. This sucks. Elections. Nobody buys during election season. But all of a sudden you come in here and you're like, oh, Erica just put 2 under contract. Tony has 3 more listings. Jake has this. Boo has this. This person has this. There's deals everywhere. So what's the excuse? things are obviously happening because your colleagues have contracts all over the place. And for some agents that creates insecurity when they go into our Slack channel and it's like under contract, 8 times a day, and you don't have anything.
And nothing in the pipeline.
There's nothing in the pipeline. There's 2 ways that you can view that. You can either say, I suck, this is awful, I'm depressed, this is the worst. Or you can say, okay, other people are transacting, I need to figure out what's happening because it's clearly not the market.
Amen and amen.
Next up, number 7, we don't know how to ask for referrals, which kind of goes back to the point of not contacting anybody afterwards. We don't do it. We're afraid to do it. We don't know how to phrase it. We don't know how to have the conversation. We don't know what the words are. We don't know when to do it. Is it salesy? Do I do it at the beginning? Do I do it at the middle? Do I do it at the end? Do I do it when it's 1 year after they bought their house? At what point do I turn around and say, do you have a referral?
Yeah, I think my favorite scripting on this that I've used 100 different times at this point is, hey, consumer, I know that you might not be in the market right now, but I have a favor to ask you, right? I love having the context of asking for a favor because I think it puts you in a great relationship with that client. I have a favor to ask you. I set some massive goals for myself this year, and I'm not going to be able to do it without connecting with a couple more people that are just as cool as you are. Do you know anybody that you think I would work really, really well with that you can set up an introduction for me with? It's that easy. It's that simple. And if you look at the amount of times, right, the average consumer maintains their mortgage for about 48 to 60 months on average. Some of those are going to be refis, obviously, but a lot of those, that's usually people, that's the buyer cycle. It's anywhere between 48 to 60 months. The odds of you calling somebody and saying, hey, are you in the market to buy? And them selling, absolutely I am. How did you know? What a great time for you to reach out to me and call me, is so far and few between that you can't build a business off of that. What can you build a business off of though? Like, hey, you know what? I'm actually not, but my friend Tony just told me 2 days ago when we were grabbing some drinks that him and his wife are thinking about upgrading. And
that goes back to the 10%. If you're only fishing for the 10%, then that call is going to be a failure. Because I'm going to ask you, hey, Boo, are you in the market for real estate? No, not really.
Okay, talk to you next quarter.
Have a great day. I'll call you back. And that's it. If you can bring yourself to a place where you feel comfortable adding a little bit, and guys, go back, listen to how he phrased that, practice that, you'll be surprised. You will be surprised. I guarantee you there's probably 6 to 8 more deals a year that you can do. If all you do is add those 2 sentences at some point in the transaction, you can make a lot of money just with that alone. You can't be afraid of it, which goes back to point number 1. We're hunting here. You got to go get it. You got to go ask for it. People aren't going to call you and say, hey, my dad wants to buy. Like, you have to go get it. Otherwise, you're just going to be waiting around.
Well, we talk about growing your database all the time in this industry. And we talked about earlier how to reframe what a win is in this industry. If you can get one of those warm introductions every single day, I promise you that will directly lead to transactions in the long term for you. And that was a successful day if you were to add one person that was a warm connect to your database.
That was a successful day. Here we go. Point number 8, mental weakness. Shit's hard, bro. Or it can be hard. And I know that you probably disagree with that, but there are days where I was just talking to one of our agents right now that she was a little bit down. I was like, are you doing all right? Clients cancel. You get a bad review. You thought you were going to get a listing and you didn't get it. Someone that was going to qualify now no longer qualifies. Somebody says we're going to wait till next year. And sometimes those losses can stack. Or sometimes in deal, things don't go well. I mean, there's so many things outside of your immediate control that can go wrong in a transaction. The financing, the inspection, the appraisal, all of these things that need to go right. The ducks need to line up for you to be able to close. A lot of agents can't handle when things start to go sideways. They allow themselves to get emotional. And then they have a client that is being emotional with them. They absorb that and then they just vomit it all over everybody else. And it becomes a massive problem that in many cases even starts to spill over into your home life.
So I think that the only reason I would say that I disagree to an extent is I am an eternal optimist. And I'm okay with that. Having said that, I am a firm believer that if I can get a consumer to tell me no and ask for more clarity on what they're saying no to, the information that is provided following a no will always be the most honest and real feedback that I will get in this business. Those losses to me, those hard days, are the days that are going to shape you in this industry. So it's not that they're not going to exist. I absolutely believe that they are going to exist. I think all that I would say is let's have a little bit of a context shift here that those no's, those bad reviews, those things that you are getting that are tearing you down are the things that are going to help you to build an actual viable business within this industry. If you get a no and you get a terrible review from somebody, that is the best feedback that you are ever going to get from a consumer. If you were to call only the people that you close and say, hey, how did I do on this transaction? What are they all going to say? Yeah, it was great. I appreciate the time, Tony. Thanks. You worked really hard for us. But it's the no's, it's the people that are telling you no, it's the people that are saying, hey, you suck, that are going to give you the most valuable brand building material that you are going to get from this industry.
Well, and at the end of the day, that's the skill set, right? Again, it goes back to context. Why are we so expensive? Why do we charge 3%? Why do we charge 5 figures for a representation? Because that's your job. Your job isn't necessarily to create smooth transactions, because a lot of it is out of your control. You can't, by yourself, secure a smooth transaction. There's a seller on the other side. There's a party on the other side. There's an agent on the other side. You just don't know. The skill set is, can I solve it? Can I navigate these issues to get my client to the finish line? So again, when you're in these tough deals, that's what you're getting paid for. So don't whine about it. Don't complain about it. Don't get emotional about it. Figure it out. If you don't know how to figure it out, hopefully you have leadership, someone that you can turn to and say, hey, I'm in this pickle. I have a broker question. What should I do? If you don't have that, leave immediately, call the police. But that's the skill set. That's what you're getting paid for. You get paid to solve.
In any sales job, you get paid for the no's. Is probably how I'm going to look at it. And if you look in this industry, a 20% conversion rate is exceptional. What does that mean? That means you got to get 4 no's before you're going to get a yes.
80% is going to be
no. Yeah. And so I think the advice that I would give you here is, if you really, really want to steer into this chasing the no's mentality, rather than calling the people that you close and asking for feedback, call the people that didn't work with you, right? I remember this is one of the things that my dad gave me early on in this business. And I was like, the hell would I do that for, my guy? That's the dumbest piece of advice that I have ever heard. But the reality of it is that those are going to be the people that are going to be the most honest with you and telling you why they didn't want to transact with you. Go and get some of those no's and watch what happens to your business.
And instead of being emotional, take it, learn from it, and get better, become a better player. Last one, I left this one for last on purpose, but issue, don't create content. You're insecure. You don't want to be in front of a camera. Social media sucks. Social media is for kids. Social media is this. Social media is that. I'm a private person. I'm an introvert. I don't want to do that. To that, Boom Addicts, you say what?
To me, I say that there's 3 reasons why you do social media. The first is the most obvious. It will lead to transactions, right? But I think that there's 2 things that are going to come from this that are going to be equally as powerful. Number 1 is the skill development that we talk about. If you can figure out how to clearly articulate what a Fed rate drop means to consumers in 30 seconds or less in a way that is entertaining and informative to people, do you think that when you go to present that to somebody in a buyer broker presentation, in a listing presentation, do you think that skill is going to translate in that real time? Absolutely. So to me, there's that portion of it, which is the skill development portion of it. Number 3, the big reason why I push social media in here as hard as I do. No, the first one was transactions. Number 2 was the skill development.
Okay.
But then number 3 is the real-time analytical feedback that you will get. If you are creating content for your specific target market, like you should be for your avatar consumer, then the analytics that you're going to get back from social media are absolutely unmatched. If somebody thinks that your spiel on what the Fed cutting rates by 0.5% means, if they are bored of that on social media, do you think that they want you droning on about it in real life?
Nope.
Hell no.
They don't care.
They don't care.
And so, which will drive some realtors crazy. Some people don't care. They care about other things, but continue.
Well, and I want to reframe too, because to me, the transactions that are going to be gained from social media are not going to be you putting up a picture of your new cable construction listing and somebody DMing you and saying, Tony, thank goodness you posted this on social media.
I'm in love.
How did you know I needed a $1.2 million house in Saratoga Springs with a finished ADU that's offering seller financing? I'm in. Let's do it. Send me the contract. I'm ready to go. But what's going to happen as you build this brand is you're going to run into friends that you haven't seen in 5 years, and they're going to be like, Tony, I just saw that you posted something. You're a real estate agent. My wife and I are actually thinking about it. Tell me about it. That's a social media win. It feels like a lot of this conversation is just us trying to reframe what the industry narrative is. The chances of you getting, that's the 10% to me that we talked about earlier. The DMs that you get, and they will happen occasionally if you are long-term focused on this, it will happen occasionally where somebody's like, hey, I want that house. The majority of the time, though, it's a branding play. It's going to come from running into somebody that you haven't seen in 3 years or since high school or since college or since whatever. And they're like, dude, I am actually looking for somebody right now. Can you explain to me about this?
Yep. So number one, it gives you the reps. I agree.
Number one is the transactions. It will lead to transactions.
Yep, it will lead to transactions. It gives you the reps that you need in order to have better conversations. And then, in my opinion, I think a big thing that people don't contextualize when it comes to social media is it allows you to have exposure that pre-internet was very expensive. Pre-internet, if you wanted to have a message in front of 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 people, that was incredibly expensive. Were you buying yellow pages? Were you doing radio? Were you doing television? How were you going to get your face in front of thousands of people? It was incredibly expensive. But every single one of us has this rectangle in our phone that can get you 100 views, 500 views. So I think it's also context of how many people that actually is. If you get 500 views in your local area, that's so many people, boo.
It's expensive anywhere else.
That's so many people. And that kind of exposure would have been incredibly expensive. It's still incredibly expensive if you go through traditional media. So the fact that it's free and you have a shot to get, let's say at worst, 100 people to see your stuff, and at best millions, I think there's absolutely no excuse and no reason why you wouldn't take the time to gamble that when it's 1,000% free.
Did you see the whole Chase Bank infinite money glitch thing that was going around in the last 30 days? Turns out that's check fraud. But turns out what we are talking about with social media and branding, to me, that's the infinite money glitch. You can reach an unlimited amount of people for free as long as you were willing, right? Where I was listening to Sharon's podcast on this morning. Where's the cost associated with social media? It's on the upfront. It's putting in the time, putting in the resources to making sure that your content is the best version of you possible. And then you're off to the races. And it's an incredible opportunity that not enough people are taking advantage of.
Start learning to make content. Keep it simple. We're talking about B-roll videos, 6-second B-roll videos. Cameron, one of our agents, started to do a couple of those. He has more interaction on that one than on any of the other ones. It doesn't necessarily have to be this. Like some people think content has to be this. You have to have Jordan sitting right there. You have to have a Rodecaster Pro with these mics that are hundreds of dollars. You have to have this office with this cool painting. Otherwise, you can't make content. Absolutely false. You can take any little 6-second B-roll video. Cameron's was what, a tree?
Yeah.
A tree with some text over it.
Yeah.
And that was it. So every single agent out there has information that we take for granted that the public needs. Something as simple as a 4-second video of a bush or a tree or a whatever it is with a little bit of text is enough to get you started. Don't feel like you need all of this stuff that can get super intimidating.
I think the last thing that I want to cover, and this isn't on our list, but part of why I think 84% of real estate agents fail in their first 2 years is I don't believe that most brokerages and teams are set up to help them in their first 24 months. And I know I'm blaspheming here, and that's okay. Y'all can come from my head. I'm okay with it. But to me, I think what is happening in our industry is that the majority of brokerages and teams have accepted this as fact. They have accepted this as scripture, that 84% of agents are going to fail. So what do? They charge them a desk fee. They charge them some copy costs. And they say, hey, if you're still standing in the next 2 years, then we will start taking over your training. Best of luck to you. Let the Hunger Games begin.
So it's how much money can I make from you before you inevitably leave?
Yeah, and I'm going to put in as little time, as little energy, and as little resources as I possibly can, because statistically speaking, 8.5 of you out of the 10 that I just hired are not going to be here in 24 months. Let's just accept that as fact. Let's accept that as there's nothing we can do to change that.
Which
BS.
I think points to what we talked about last time of these long-term agreements.
Yes.
That's what it goes down to. Because if I can keep all of you in the room for 18 months, that should be enough time to see who pops and who I should dedicate time to.
And those are going to be my star pupils.
And that's it. And everybody else, okay, I'm not going to renew you. Sorry. Thanks for playing. They're hiring.
You're not going to renew yourself.
That's it. So agents, if you're in a place that you feel that doesn't prioritize these 9 things, these 10 things that we just talked about, you need to find a place that does. And it doesn't matter where in the country you are, but you need to be in a place where you're practicing your communication skills. You feel like the brokerage is actually investing in your success, because otherwise this gets very difficult. It gets very lonely. And if you don't have any kind of support, you're going to be another statistic.
So comment down below what other topics you want us to cover. We got a bunch more things that we're going to go over. We're going to keep approaching it from an opinionated mindset because we disagree strongly with how a lot of the market is being approached right now. Subscribe to stay in tune with everything that we got going, and hang on because we are just getting started.
Let's go.